Hey, Internet, Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. That means you've been paid for, and that makes you immortal now. He's not going to belong anyway, wrapping up this veil of tears. Water seals it, food feeds it. This is Christianity. You should join us. You found Stop the White Noise with Jonathan and Meredith. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Meredith.
And it's Thursday night because we are headed for Peck Things this weekend, which makes sense to everyone here and to no one anywhere else, because who would ever name something Peck Things? When you first told me about Peck Things, I was like, okay, what's Peck Things? And then I was like, why do they call it that? And you're like, well, it's in the town of Peckatonica. I was like, oh. So Peck Things is a grand fair-like flea market, but high quality, but a mix, all sorts of stuff, local here in the Rockford area. And Meredith and a friend went in last year on a booth. And this year, our family's gone in on a booth. And so we are neck deep in, I don't know what to say, everything. Every member of our family has a different idea. I mean, you can come and watch our youngest do balloon animals. She'll do a balloon animal for you. So we're ready for a good time, but it means we're going to broadcast here tonight, Thursday night instead of Friday, and be pretty much AWOL the rest of the weekend, except for when we're at church. So looking forward to this, and we can talk more about that or whatever else you want to bring up in the comments. We've got a few questions as well already lined up. If you want to send questions to the show, you can do it through Mad Christian Mondays. That's at madpxm.com. Click on contact there and send us your question. I'd be happy to answer your question about the Bible, about jiu-jitsu, or anything else you're curious about. And Meredith, of course, is the mastermind of how to tame a young child with Christian virtue. So ask your questions about Christian parenting here as well. If you love our show, please support us. Subscribestar.com/REVFISK is the way to do that. And if you're not like getting my newsletters from redfisk.com, you really, well, you don't have to. I mean, you're just missing out on whenever anything actually happens. That's where I'll say it first. So redfisk.com, check it out there. All right. Hey, Carl says our summer Bible class is studying your book Broken, and we're in the Wells. It's New Life Central, Kenosha, Wisconsin. Thank you, Carl. Yeah, I have been rediscovering Broken as I am republishing little tidbits of it in my daily newsletter and also on Facebook and Twitter. And it's interesting. Like I do lots of little things on Facebook and Twitter, and it doesn't get much traction, but these are getting more traction, which is really something. Watching like 50, 60 likes on what is that on Facebook, but rediscovering its value, and also kind of as I go through it, seeing how young I was as I wrote that book. It really is there, at least to my eye, in the matter. So if you'd like more of that or my insights on that and whatnot, you can of course get those at revfisk.com, where a little bit of Broken's coming out just about every day, along with my Sons of Solomon discipline and other notes from the field as I work on what I work on. So, yeah. So I want to let Meredith talk, but Vicar Beautiful Savior has asked a very important and valuable question, which is, Pastor, what's the best way to roll with you? Well, you can join Core Combat in Rockford, Illinois, where Tommy Woodruff holds sway, and you'll find me at most Tuesday or Thursday day classes, sometimes a Tuesday night class, in a rare Blue Moon Saturday afternoon class. You can come to their annual picnic. I love rolling at that picnic. That's a great time to hang out and roll with someone. But the other way would be to visit the Hebron Collegium, hebroncollegium.org. It is set up for you to roll with me. It is a spiritual retreat center for Christian men, biological Christian males, to encourage you, young men, to get your life in order and set your trajectory for righteousness by learning early to pray the Psalter and read the Proverbs of the man of peace as your path to, well, hope, understanding, wisdom, all these things. And while you're here getting a nice taste of that, some deep devotion, some healthy food, a little time of quiet, some maybe checking out the woodworking studio, those kinds of things, you can also say, Pastor Fisk, I want a private lesson on the mat. And because you're here, $10 a day for food, I'll give you that lesson for free. And it will include a roll if that's what you ask. I have gladly, let's see, I'm not really that good, just to be fair here, but since I think it's the 3 guys who've come through here and said, let's go. Yeah, I've choked every one of them. They choked, they tapped, and it was what they needed. So if that's what you need, I'm here for you. And if you need to tap me, I'll tap, and then we can be friends afterwards. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's fun at parties. Anyway, yeah. Meredith, I want to let you say hello. You haven't even talked yet. Good evening.
Yeah, we have a big festival coming up at the Hebron Collegium.
Truth.
Just around the corner. The Sons of Solomon annual muster is on Memorial Day weekend. And part of that weekend that starts with a prayer vigil on Sunday evening also has time on the mat over at Hebron specifically for rolling and touring Hebron and seeing what it's like.
Well, that's a fact. All summer long, honestly, our local, we call it the Hebron community. It is those of us who attend St. Paul Lutheran Church and work to support Hebron as volunteers in the background. We all gather and have a open mat time, 4:30 to 6 on Sunday evenings, and then there's a barbecue, bring your own meat barbecue at our house across the street. So again, reach out through the Hebron Collegium, and if you want to come through anytime, you can participate in these things, or go to Sons of Solomon and reach out about that muster, the Sons of Solomon muster. That's just a couple weeks away. Not only will there be mat time on Sunday afternoon, but I believe if you really wanted it on Monday, you'd get it as well. But Monday is mainly the picnic. We're just going to chill. I know there's a guy named Golgotha that brings whiskey every year, so we sit there and we sip it in the sun and grill our burgers and solve the world's problems by largely trusting in Jesus and talking about the Proverbs. Not just that, though. Many more things. So, sonsofsolomon.net for more of that. Yeah. What else?
It's been a pretty busy week around the Fisk home.
Madness.
Yeah. You have rearranged the studio and
the bedroom.
Most of the rooms.
There's a lot going on. I mean, I didn't really rearrange the front rooms. I just used them for peck things, which involved rearranging the basement to get all the stuff that, there's like 2 angles to peck. No, there's not. There's like 17 angles to peck things for me. And the most important one is to launch my kids, to give my kids a bug for, I can put a little elbow grease in and hang up a shingle and someone might buy something and maybe I'll get better. So, trying to help them see the value in industry. But then I really, do just want to get rid of a lot of things that I like so I won't throw them away or give them away. Because it's like a bag for a pipe that's leather and nice. It's really a nice bag. Like, I'd rather sell it than give it away. And since I have been foolish enough to like bags and boxes, wires, more boxes. I've been pulling all that stuff out of the basement and trying to clarify what's actually going on there. A lot of old tech from years and years of trying to put on this show. I got tripods from 10 years ago. And so, a chance to just set all that stuff out. And if not put it for sale, then we'll put it somewhere else. So, but that really meant that our basement was in our living room for 3 days at least. And it's still kind of there. Garage is full of painted furniture. I didn't have anything to do with most of that. A little bit of it, but no.
Yeah, you were good at gathering the furniture. So you gathered and I painted it.
You painted it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I made a little mess out there with the stuff that I kind of set up to, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out how to display things. But I wish you'd talk about your furniture more, though. I think that you painted it as if that's like, you just threw a coat on.
Well, I've talked about this so many times, so it's kind of... It's a little bit redundant. I enjoy taking furniture that's wooden and highlighting its uniqueness by painting it usually white, and then accenting it with maybe a gray or a blue. It could be any color really, but at this point, grays and blues are soothing to me, so they actually do trigger calm in the psyche and the soul and the mind of man. And so I gravitate towards those at this season of life. And as I paint the furniture, I get to know each detail of it. And to me, that's very rewarding. I see the craftsmanship that went into it, and I appreciate it more and more as I try to elevate it to the eye or the naked eye of the person who would just pass by and see. I mean, you brought home a magazine rack, and I had a primitive shelf with 2 drawers in it, some old cabinet doors, and some other things, but it's just been a nice time to pray, a nice time to thank God for various types of weather as I'm outside working in various garages. I've also learned that it's nice for a mother to do her hobbies at home. The more that you can be at home, the more calm, kind of what I want to say filters down, but it's more like snow falling. It just kind of blankets.
It's like having the robin on the nest. When the robin's on the nest, the birds are going to be a little bit quieter. They're just going to be underneath. And happy.
So it brings, even though I have very self-sufficient children, my kiddos are a little older, it brings more calm and serenity to the home as I stay home.
What I love about the that you've taken these pieces of furniture that I kind of, I was doing a couple things. Building Hebron's a wonderful, wonderful game for me. Like being able to build a house for boys to become men in. What does this take, right? And well, magazine racks. Not exactly, but the threshing floor as a space. If you've never seen it, go to HebronCollegium.org and click on threshing floor and look at the space. I mean, it's built as a space that's supposed to be public and private at the same time. It's a place where individual, like the overseer of the Collegium, which currently be me, but God be praised, may this be a long endeavor, is going to have an office and a study, and yet it's also a place where woodwork can be done, where small engine work can be done, where the jiu-jitsu mats are, where the weightlifting facility is. I mean, it's a clubhouse, right? It's an awesome clubhouse. And so, it didn't have any furniture, so the first thing I did was I moved the overpriced lawn furniture that we bought that really wasn't made to be outside, and I moved it in, and that was wonderful. That was amazing right away. And then next thing I know, I was like, well, I just keep my eyes open. And I love going to the Restore, particularly. Goodwill is okay. You can find some things at Goodwill, so I'm not trying to knock Goodwill, but Restore for furniture just has more. They just have so much. And what I love is the very things that you walk by and I'm looking, okay, furniture. No, that's a piece of wood right there. Mm-hmm. That's a piece of real wood on top. Look at this thing. And it's a diamond in the rough, and you can barely notice it unless you're looking for the distinction between real and fake. And then it jumps at you, and I love that when it jumps at you, and especially if it's solid wood and it's old. And so I just was buying these things to fill holes in the threshing floor space where a side table or a magazine rack could just kind of sit, and I wanted books out there as well, so the magazine rack kind of served that purpose. But so here I am just kind of randomly spot picking good pieces of wood that nobody wants, and then you see them and you're like, you see what I see actually, and then you brought it out even more. And so I've really enjoyed watching that process, and
thank you.
I hope we get to do more of that, because we're going to try to sell these pieces, and then what we're going to do is we'll replace them. Like we'll use the profit cash to buy at least another piece to go into the threshing floor where the piece came from, and then from there, you get the profit, and then we do it again, next year,
right?
And just kind of that, but that's the idea, not only of like we're just trying to make $25 on a chair or whatever. No, like that's the idea of this place, right? Is that everything in this place can become more than it is and benefit you, going both directions while it happens, and leave fruit at the end. Not for you, for others. Mm-hmm. And that's the design of the Hebron Collegium. That's not just the spirit, but the design. And if you spend some time in the building, how can a building be designed that way? Come visit and find out. It really is. I don't want to say that I have every gift in the world, but I have a few insights. And one of them is on what we men need to put our hands to, and how God has made us to do so that it benefits all when we do. And learning those lessons the hard way, glad to share. And I'm really glad, Meridith, to have you kind of inspired by some of the same stuff that I am, particularly good wood.
Yeah, well,
Good
thank
wood.
you. It's been a pleasure as we've gone along that journey. I'm excited to see how everything comes together in the booth tomorrow.
Goodness, it's not. There's going to be no coming together. It's just going to all be there. So, yeah. Should mention Studio 31, spell it out, 24. This is our daughter's art studio, which will see a lot of their work, and particularly our oldest daughter, Chloe's work, going up online. If it doesn't sell this weekend, she has been the most prolific of all of us, I think, in terms of product. It's just pumping out pieces left and right, and her years of exploring different mediums and finding floral design. It just is super impressive. So I shared some of this on today and yesterday's redfisk.com Ziklag daily newsletter, so you can see some of her work there if you go there. I think it was yesterday's is the one where it's got the Rockford one on it. It's just amazing.
Yeah,
amazing,
stunning.
And but again, Studio31TwentyFour, her work ongoing will be there. She does work for commission and custom. If you like a Bible verse and want it done in flowers, I tell you, you got your girl here. So
something that she's been kind of toying with is the name of a space with the local flowers. So the name of a town, for example, Rockford, and then some of the local flowers. We have cornflowers and sunflowers often along the side of the road. And so, those little tiny sunflowers. So she did a sign with Rockford. It's a wooden sign with Rockford written out in white, and then sunflowers and cornflowers kind of framing it.
That's beautiful. Acrylic. Her paint, her color mixtures they're great. And it's definitely impressionism, but a strong realism in the impressionism. And again, so just promoting that and sharing because it's worth it. My own art as well. I have several pieces printed now and will be for sale. You can see about those also at the Ziklag Daily, and then also cards for those, which I'll try to make available online in the future. But right now we're just doing that locally. So I'm really excited because that's a box I've wanted to step out of for quite some time, and I maybe want to talk about a little bit, copyright law, AI art, public rights to stuff. That's kind of the question: is my art actually my art, since it's AI rendered work?
Yeah, interesting.
So maybe we can zoom back around and talk about that a little bit later.
That kind of fits in with one of our questions we have, actually.
Well, good.
So
we can go there, but for the moment, again, I'm like, of all the stuff I had printed, the thing that has me the most excited is the iconography, the icon of Christ that I have, which I've titled this one Christ Beloved, which I could call it Christ David, but then no one would understand it. But it's Christ Beloved. David means beloved in Hebrew. And it is a digital color print on metal. He is surrounded by a halo of gems and gold that shimmers like you just wouldn't believe. And the detail of what is effectively a acrylic with a watercolor inspire. You can do things in digital you just can't do anywhere else. And then what AI lets you do is piggyback on the masters and imagine away. And so is it... I was thinking about how I would say this to someone. The tree, which is my bigger piece, is my most expensive piece. I don't expect it to sell. It's like, that's my self-portrait. I'm not going to do a self-portrait of me. That's my self-portrait right there. That's it. This tree by streams of living water, right? And tree by streams, number one. Someone might say like, well, AI, you just type something in and render that. It only took you a few seconds. It's true. It did. Like, I typed something in, and I think with that one, I maybe have about 12 different renderings. So that means I maybe spent 15 to 20 minutes reseeding and trying to work with it a little bit to get something different out of it. And this might have been the first one that came out, for all I know, because it isn't always like the last one that's the best one that you're going for. And it's an interesting medium to work with. It really is. It's a computer. How long did it take me to make this? It took me a lifetime to make that. I couldn't do it again. No one else could do that. Where is it? Show me it. Show me it anywhere in the whole world. Show me the Christ beloved anywhere in the whole world, right? How long did it take me? A lifetime. So the notion that art doesn't count because you didn't put, I used my hands, I used my fingers. I did in fact put a medium to pressure. like all those things happened. They're just not the way that people want to say you have to do it to have it really be art. Now, there's my defense. Look, I'm looking at this piece again. It's 3.5 by 3.5 feet on canvas. It's beautiful. It's like a watercolor acrylic fusion, and the tree is dripping. It's so gorgeous. If it were actually watercolor and acrylic, it'd be worth so much money. It's just it'd be amazing. So it's not worth that much money. It is a print. It is never going to be the other things, but it is what it is. Mm. And so I think it's worth what it's worth. And because it is the only one in the world, and I'm going to sign it and promise if you buy it, I'll make one more and I'll keep it. So it will, the only one there ever is. I'm pretty sure a lifetime of my enjoyment of foolish entertainment, pursuit of biblical theology, hungering for truth and philosophy, loving the depths of history, studying every manner of story that I could find. I mean, it all comes together to give this today. And I welcome anyone else. Go learn Midjourney. That's the one you got to pay for right now. Is the best one. Go use it. Midjourney. Become an artist. You can do it. Did you spend your lifetime learning to write and you feel bad because you would have rather drawn? You can do it. Don't let anyone tell you it's not your art. But we can talk about that with the copyright issue again. More, I already went off on a little bit. And all of this is me wanting to promote the whole event, which includes then other children. We got a little girl doing chicken cards to die for, and a little boy, actually, his leaf cards are pretty cool too. Mm-hmm. So industry and making beauty, and just so glad to see my family embracing, like, let's make beauty. And if it doesn't make money, it'll be worth the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the process of watching each person go about making their art and doing their projects has been really interesting, because there is a lot of temptation to compare oneself to another, and you do see kind of that feeling of defeat when somebody shares what they've accomplished and then somebody else feels like, oh, I could never do that, so I'm not even going to try. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the most rewarding things has been for one of our children who was self-professed not crafty to find what she does enjoy and really dive into it. And her craft that she does is, I guess it's similar to my own, where I'm not building a piece of furniture. I'm not coming up with it in my own head. I'm just taking what somebody else has already crafted and I'm embellishing it. And her craft is more like that. But the way that her eye sees color, the way that her eye sees space, it's so soothing and brings delight to those who see it. So that has been really rewarding. And then also, as a parent, trying to be proactive and help her to see that, like you were saying, art doesn't fit in a box. We are creative people, and we can do creative things with almost anything. And so one of the things that she ended up doing was making chalkboards. And so that in and of itself was delightful for her. And the way she went about it was very creative. I wouldn't have thought to use the different articles that she did.
What she did it with,
in the way she did. I went out and I found them, but at the same time, when I brought it home, I wasn't expecting it to be used the way she used it. And so I was super excited to see her put her own creativity to use there. And then watching also I don't want it to constantly be something that we're talking about, but at the same time, I think it should be in the day and age that we live. Watching the boy brain work on this project versus the girl brain.
It is the thing we have to talk about in the day and age that we live in, because no one's talking about it, and everyone who is talking about it says it doesn't exist. So we have to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Man and woman. But yeah.
And I mean, I think your contribution outside of your art that you had really prepared and thought through, your contribution to our stall, our booth, kind of gives a good example of the man brain versus the woman brain. So the women were busy making little messes that then cleaned up into a product, and you went and searched out product and gathered it, like created a huge mess. Like the girls had gathered these materials over time and had planned and thought, and the man goes and just digs and searches in his things, knowing there's treasure.
Well, because that's the thing. Like,
and
I
then-
had gathered all those things over time, and I had not gotten rid of them. I had just never thought this is for a store until I said to y'all, I'm buying a space at Peck Things called Boxes and Bags, because I had gathered all these boxes and bags over time, and it was like, okay, how do I bring this together? Now the wires, that's a different matter, right? finding an endless supply of coaxial cable and micro USB cords, that I would rather give away than have. That this is just me trying to get rid of stuff. So that maybe that's a little more like, I don't mind messing up my store in order to get rid of some stuff, but I do think that like it still is. It was about pursuing a long idea. There was a long idea there. But I guess I don't. So I guess I see it as the same thing. Like,
yeah, it is. It's just the matter of how it comes about. So, the space that one needs or some people need in order to be creative is like, if I walk into a kitchen with dirty dishes and I am supposed to create supper, it's very hard for me. And so typically I will try to clean up at least a few of the dishes and create that mental space so that I can be creative. And I saw that in the way that the girls worked. But with our son and with you, I saw how the creativity of another person as they're winding down on the project and bringing completion inspired a new project, a new idea. And so to a point where we had a piece of furniture last minute being spray painted on the front lawn.
Yeah, right.
As an exploratory project.
Right.
The busiest week of May, and a new project was being started by our son. And it was beautiful because he needed that experience. He at one point actually spray painted the desk shut, and so like how do you learn that? And the sisters are just going, oh, this is not what we need right now. And it's like, yeah, true. In the type of medium they're working with, the brains that they have to be creative, having more chaos is not going to help. But at the same time, recognizing that what he needs to learn is that entire process. And when he's older, like one of the better gifts that we can give to his wife, to his children, is allowing him to have this chaotic experience now, so that when he's older and he's the head and the leader, he can be one of those men who knows what to do. And has insight to share.
One of the things that's gone through my head as I took over the living room the last couple of days, I mean, and this is letting a little bit of an inside conversation out that, not everyone has this, but we've had conversations about ownership and space. And so
yeah, we have a question about that too.
There was this very intentional part of me, which I was just like, you know what? We've had these conversations, so I'm done trying to do it all in this 12 by 12 foot room. I'm done. That's my living room. I need it. That's my big table. I need it only for 3 days, but to have the creative space to finish the project. The project was so big. And then there were like 7 projects. and they're all in a big spinning circle. And so I pick one up and I move over here, and that's it. But everything moved forward, and it's all happened. Yeah, I don't know. Is that man, woman always? That's an interesting thing to pause it and ponder a little bit there.
At first, I thought it was maybe personality, but then as I watched and I saw the similarities between the son being inspired and doing a similar but different type of thing. It's like we have been talking about Pack Thing for a long time.
Yeah.
And this is go week. Like this is wind it down, get it priced week. And I understand with yours, it's like, no, this was the week that I set aside because I have a job, 3. And so I'm not able to always get to those long-term projects until it is go time. Totally get that. But I saw the inspiration kind of hit you both at the same time in the same way, but in different facets of life. And then with our son, expectation that he would understand the stress and see the trial that other people were going through and be helpful rather than be demanding more of our attention. Like that's just kind of ridiculous on our part. You know, his brain just doesn't work that way.
No, I mean, that's the lesson he's supposed to be learning. And that's where, if our communication had been better, he wouldn't have been doing this project this week, because both of us believe the other person was overseeing the project. And so, you know, and he's pretty good at that. Not like he's sitting there planning it, but like your kids are smart. They're like, you think your dog can outthink you. Your kids can outthink you without thinking. They will. They'll just do it because they're wily little things. They want what they want. And so, yeah, but like you said, I mean, Jesus has a plan. It always is for the good. The lesson we need to learn is to be better at setting boundaries. For him, the lesson he needs to learn is to see others in their task and be inspired by it without destroying their task in the process. And
as parents, I think that recognizing that the brain of a boy just isn't there in the ability to see others. And it's not going to be until
not for a long time.
Maybe he's 19 when he starts becoming romantic, but 25 is like, that's when the man brain really turns out.
And that's if he's matured too.
Yeah.
Like if he hasn't been traumatized into some sort of like inward focus, you know, shaky, trembly, you know, Fisk version. Right?
And no.
Hey, I grew up, so it's not me anymore. I can say I grew up. But look, if you're out there and you know what I'm talking about, struggling to be in society, not sure of your place as a man, I can say to you, there is hope. You can grow up. It does happen. It doesn't happen overnight, and it won't happen while you're playing video games and living in your mom's basement. So, yeah.
As a parent of a child who is a young boy brain, to recognize this, I think will save us a lot of heartache, a lot of headache, and a lot of shame on their part. I think it's good for us to take a step back and to recognize, like, if you're sitting there having to say, why are you doing this? He doesn't know.
Right.
It would be the same as, you know, asking a puppy why he's
right.
running
there's
out
no
into
recollection.
the street after
there's
a car.
only,
It's like he doesn't know. He's just instinct. There is something moving very fast, and I thought that I would run after it. You know, so allowing ourselves as parents, as authority figures, as mentors in their lives to notice they don't know, and they're not going to.
Right.
And so, like with this project, for example, you said it really well. Having better boundaries on my part as the parent and being able to say, hey, I love your ideas. This week, I can't walk you through the steps. And because of how important this piece of furniture is to your father, let's wait till next week so that we can work on it together and I can focus on it.
Right.
As opposed to
and being ready for him to get sullen, to downcast his eyes, to pout his lower lip, and then not engage that. Like, don't even acknowledge it. Just smile and say, all right, we'll see you later. And give what you would like him to get. or give. Yeah. And because right now you've taught me this, they're basically internalizing your responses
Oh, yeah.
for what will be their responses later. And their responses right now aren't going to last as long as you give them good responses yourself. And it doesn't mean you never tell them no. You do have to say, that's a rude behavior. Don't do that. But like,
don't get emotional.
yeah. Oh, so hard though. So hard because they know how to poke you. They know how to poke you. As your kids, they will.
Yeah. But also, like, it's one of those moments where somebody told me parenting is like holding a mirror up in front of your face. You see your strengths and you see your weaknesses. And if you're an emotional person, you're going to have a real roller coaster going through the adolescent phase with your kiddos, because it's going to show you how much self-control you lack.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Your boundaries. It'll show you where your boundaries really are.
Yeah.
How easy is it for someone else to move you, get under your skin, bother you, piss you off,
So
right? If they really want to, you're on the free throw line, you got to take a shot. Is it hard for them to scare you or not? I know the hard way, that one. Yeah. Cold on that line.
Here's an example that happened, and it was a victory moment. Recently our son grew. Surprise, like he's almost 13. It's going to happen. But suddenly it was like, whoa, your pants do not fit. We need to get you new pants. So I went to Walmart, got him some new pants. And he was really proud of them. They were the stone-washed 1980s jeans, really slick. He felt super slick in these pants because I let him pick whichever kind he wanted instead of dictating like, oh, no, you're going to wear these to church, so let's get black or let's get navy. No, and to be honest, 80s styles are not my favorite.
Oh, really?
So,
80s was cool.
I am sorry, but it makes me have like a little bit of
wear
vomit
leg
in my
warmers
throat
and
when I
they look
think of
great
it.
on you. So
well,
there.
thank you. That did come out of the ballet studio into like normal life in the 80s.
Yes.
Yes, it did. I will recognize that. However, it stayed in the ballet studio before and after. And so like I don't count leg warmers as 1980s.
I think
that's going to be my little cop out.
They're pretty cute in
But
80s.
anyhow, so stonewashed, he was really excited about this. And every time he put those on and would wear them, he'd match his shirt with it in a specific way. And I could tell it was a proud moment. Anyhow, he decided to spray paint in them.
I've been there. Not with spray paint. I mean, not in spray paint, but.
And then I see him come into the house real quiet, like kind of look at me. And I'm, whatever, I'm doing
Are these for church too?
He would wear them on Saturday night church.
Okay,
so we have Saturday night church, and I allow, because it's in the afternoon, I allow the kids to be a little more casual.
Sure.
Try not to do the ripped jeans, but if you're wearing jeans, because that's what you're wearing, okay.
Yeah.
So he has worn them. So he comes into the kitchen.
But
I'm
not
doing
with spray
my
paint
work.
on them. He hasn't worn them with spray paint yet.
No, not
to
yet.
church. Yeah, okay.
So then I see him and I'm just kind of like, whatever, hi. I didn't look at him really because there was no need. He was running in and out. So why would I stop him? And then I see him kind of dash up the stairs with no pants on. And I'm like, oh. And then I see him dash down the stairs, still with no pants, but something in his arms. I'm like, Fides, did you get paint on your pants? And he comes over, I can't see him. He's hiding behind the door frame of the kitchen. Yeah. And I'm like, when did it happen? Just now, or was it a while ago? And he's like, oh. And just comes in and just plops his stuff in front of me. And I'm like, well, we've got to get Dawn liquid soap on this real quick if we're going to have any chance. And don't wash it in hot water. Got to be cold. And then he starts, and I'm just like, oh, Fides, this isn't, you're not going to get this out. And then I said, he was wearing one of his favorite shirts with, I think it's like the link symbol.
No.
that
It's
you'd
the
given
green
him.
one. No. It's just it's a fake Gucci shirt.
No. That's the one he changed into. You gave him another green link with the eyeball. Is there an eyeball in link or a triangle with?
There is a Triforce.
Okay, so Triforce link symbol.
Okay, cool.
It's like, and it's one of the
Favorite
only
shirt.
shirts that his hamster hasn't chewed a little tail hole through yet. His hamster sits on his shoulder, so she'll chew a little hole and then she'll stick her tail through it. It's kind of cute, but he's getting frustrated with losing all of his favorite shirts to hamster chews. But anyhow, so he's wearing that shirt and one of his favorite zip-up sweaters, and I'm like, hey, okay, let's change your clothes because you're going to go back out and I want you to put your paint clothes on. And he was so angry about losing his pants that he just didn't want to have any time for me and my advice, and came up with different reasons why, it's too hot. I'm not going to wear my paint clothes because they're all pants. And I was like, no, I just folded clothes. I know I saw paint on some shorts. So look through your clothes, get some shorts with paint on them. And no. Anyway, the idea behind this is the emotion was high. He was sad. I did not get emotional other than to stay firm with my boundary. You will not go paint unless you change your clothes. And this is because real Fisk moment, we can't afford to buy you more clothes. And so I need you to only ruin the ruined clothes. And so, he, for a minute, just decides he's not going to paint. And then later, I see him come out with different shorts on that have paint on them. And I don't talk to him. And then later he comes over to me. I am magically still in the kitchen. I don't know what I was doing, but I don't know why I have a desk. I just have to live in the kitchen.
I tried to get you to put the desk in the kitchen, if you recall.
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's pretty close to the kitchen.
Not close enough,
though. Yeah. But he comes up to me, sidles up to me, and he's like, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm sorry for getting mad at you.
That's nice.
I said, I forgive you. I said, I understand. You were really bummed about your pants, weren't you? And he goes, yeah. And I said, it happens. But you know what? I did that once to my pants with bleach. And so I used bleach and I painted a design.
That was really cool.
Up the whole leg to hide it. Mm-hmm. So maybe you could spray paint the rest of your pants.
You might.
And I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. But
you might talk him. Maybe he's listening. Don't spray paint all the pants. They'll be very crunchy. They will not bend. But you could spray paint a design.
Yeah.
That's where the airbrush and stuff could be really cool.
He's at
too.
Civil Air Patrol right now.
That's right.
So he's not listening tonight. But he might
Fridays.
listen eventually. But yeah, so good.
I'm still lost on part of the story. What happened to the Zelda shirt?
Oh, he took it off.
Okay, so that had not been painted on yet,
shirt.
but you were afraid it would get painted on,
yeah.
and then he did take it off. Okay.
He put the Gucci shirt on that had no sleeves.
Yeah. I like that shirt. The symbol's not even straight. It's like
yeah.
Something crooked. It's great. That's a Goodwill find right there. That's a Goodwill find. Gucci? What? I'm gonna go through a couple comments here. Way back, Grace said we got our first dining room table at the Restore in Rockford, and it has come with us around the country and is still a central place in our home. There are a lot of good tables there, without question. And
I love to think about the different memories and conversations that have been had over dining room tables. I do refinish stuff, but if there's a big scratch, if there's a big chunk taken out of it, sometimes I try to just leave it and paint it in it.
Scars make us.
But yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we have on our table, fork marks from when I think it was our youngest or it was our son. I can't remember. One of them decided to take the fork to the table and just banged the tongs in to the wood of the table. And it was kind of frustrating. You want to, we don't do that at the
We
table.
already had the round white circle stained
These,
into the
this
wax.
table. So this table, let me just tell you.
It's beautiful.
Because it's funny. I went to Crate and Barrel Warehouse when we lived in Naperville, Illinois. They had a warehouse sale. And so all of their floor models were on like super sale. This table was up in the thousands. I think it was $3,500 or something. And it was on sale for, no kidding, $250. I was floored. And it had no blemishes. I think maybe there was one chunk taken out of the bottom or something. And so I called up my husband. I'm like, hey, hon, can you borrow the church van? And he's like, what did you do?
We did it in the pilot, I thought.
No.
We used the van?
It's so big.
We still had to have the doors of the back open. We didn't shut I drove it with it open, right?
This table seats like 12 people.
Yeah, right. It's a big
is
table.
So big.
Doesn't fit in any house we've ever lived in, really.
Right.
It's in our living room. Our dining room is our living room. That's where we live.
We would go with our realtor through the home and be like, because this was Naperville. We moved to Oaks, North Dakota. We moved down to St. Louis.
Yeah, and we tried it in the kitchen in Oaks. And where did I move it? Into the living room. And in Naperville, our living room, dining room, like flowed into each other. So it just spilled right into the dining room. But didn't really fit in the nook that it was built for.
No.
And then neither in St. Louis did it.
No.
We pushed it there, but it was took a lot of space where it was. And then, the
realtors would be like, okay, wait, how big is your dining table?
That's right. It was that part of the whole thing. We have to keep this $250 table.
They would like walk in. Oh, your dining room table's not going to fit in here. Let's just back out.
No,
just
really,
don't do their house.
We could buy a house.
Yeah, but so anyhow, it has this finish on it that's wax. And so anytime hot bowls, hot cups, hot anything is set on it, even, now it has an ironing board mark and a hot pad that was made out of your very first cincture. Is that what that's called?
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it is a cincture.
So when pastors' wives, when your husband's old cincture needs to be done away with, you can make it into a hot pad. I'm happy to let you know how. We have marks from those things all over this table because the wax finish just absorbs the heat and melts and turns white. So instead of a black table, it's black and white spotted.
Very irregularly with a few lines. But it served us very well. It works. We got a longer comment question here from Chase, who says, I find myself, there's a left turn into theology, I find myself shaky on sola Scriptura, specifically the canon as a collection, not each book per se. I heard someone say they recommend the canon, but couldn't remember what author. It's F.F. Bruce. F.F. Bruce. Canon of Scripture by F.F. Bruce. I don't know about the canon. Canon of Scripture by F.F. Bruce will be your best historical explanation of where it came from, why it got together, and why, there's no reason to question it unless you like the Pope for some really bad reason and want to submit yourself to man who teaches you to justify yourself. Now, aside from that, the canon's pretty set just because it is. The only question you could really have is, should we put the intertestamental stuff back in? And even if you put it back in, it just always sits as less than the rest. It's not inspired. No one's ever really said it was inspired. It's a testimony of history. So that question, even Rome kind of doesn't really use it as scripture unless they need to attack Lutherans over purgatory or something nonsensical. So he says, do you have any recommendations or advice on the proper way to understand sola Scriptura and the preservation of Scripture? I think my problem is related to looking at it like whether someone is writing or preserving or speaking bodily. They're both relying on the person. I think the writer is closer to the source, but it just doesn't sit strongly with me. Wolfmueller mentioned Galatians 1 in a recent video, and that helped. Is looking for more, I suppose, he says. And Frisbee asks a clarifying question, which is pretty helpful. Do you mean sola Scriptura or the inspiration of Scripture? But I think he does. They go together a little bit, and he's meaning sola Scriptura, the canon. How do I know the books in the Bible are the books that are supposed to be in the Bible? How do I know they didn't cheat? I've preached on it twice now since I had this conversation with a young man local, and I kind of thought I was stepping on a limb by saying, I don't know about the moon landing, and he came back with like, I don't believe anything before 1985. Who knows? So why would I trust, the Bible? It's just like any other thing, and they're all lying. Everybody. Okay, well, what I said to him was, you should read Jesus and not the Bible. Like, go read Jesus. Listen to the man. Pretend like he's Buddha for a second and see if he moves you, because he will. And then he's not going to say what Buddha said. So listen to him. Yeah. So there's an angle there to break through the noise. But his claim is that how can I know with certainty that this is what it says that it is? How do I have enough testimony from enough trustworthy sources to come to believe this? And as a person who has gone through seminary, who has read the F.F. Bruce book, who has studied the online forums and found all the arguments you can possibly find, right? What I can tell you is that the best answer is the one that I was given when I was 20 years old at a Bible study for the first time coming back into church, when Jeff Shaver said, I don't know, God put this book in my hand and it's all right there. So it's been that way for a long time. Who am I to question it? That is kind of it. Like, so what you're saying is either, and I don't know, because he hasn't said, like, you'd rather be a Roman Catholic and have the intertestamental stuff and thrown in and the tradition of the church and the teaching hierarchy of the church to clarify your fear that the teaching hierarchy of the church messed up when they did the canon in 385 or whatever, right? Like you're not really getting out of the frying pan at all, right? You're pouring burning oil fire onto the fire in the first place, or throwing water on the oil fire. So if that's not your issue, is you're just trying to fit that in, then you're just trying to know that we didn't mess up somehow. I mean, where would I go? Acts 2 then, man. It's Acts 2. It's Pentecost. Jesus is in charge. How's this word get here? Where did it come from? You're reading it in English. That's not good enough if you want it to be authentic. But then again, yes, it is. Why? Because the tongues get translated by the Spirit. I'm not saying every English translation works. I'm not saying don't study. I'm saying that look what God has already done that's obvious. Before you think you're the one that's going to figure out how to fix it all and put it back here at the end of the world, maybe join forces with the team of light and trust what's been handed to you as the sword of righteousness. Read it, cover to cover, multiple times, backward and forward, starting with the Proverbs before you decide to question its veracity as a historical reality as canon. It's what they left us from 385. They said, hold on to this. I mean, what's your argument? We're 1,700 years later, and it all went great until 1960, or maybe until the Diet of Worms. But we'll leave that for another time. It all seemed to go pretty well, pretty swimmingly with Christendom, until we decided that the atheists could teach Bible at, Yale. And once that started happening, it all went downhill. And now they're wanting us to believe men and women don't exist and all this stuff. So I mean, that was like overnight. But you hear what I'm saying? The substance of the canon as a document by itself, regardless of claims to inerrancy and inspiration, is historically golden in its pedigree. Golden in its pedigree. That's Greek and Hebrew and the canon that they put together. Like, however you look at it, is golden in its pedigree. From a purely secular point of view, you have to be biased out of your mind to think it isn't what the early Christians thought and said in 300s, and that therefore they were building on what was thought and said in the 100s. It has to be, okay? Unless you're just biased and you hate Christianity. So from there, like, what's your beef? Read it. What's your problem? It doesn't hold together. Why? What I found more and more is that every place I ever had a question, I've just been proven dead wrong. Why does it say that? I don't understand why it says it that way. Couldn't it ever say it this way? Every time. There's always a reason. There's always a reason. And, from all the way from, why can't women be pastors? Down to what more recently? I don't know. Like, the things I always am like, why does Paul have to take the time to say these 3 verses right here in the middle of his argument when it'd be easier to preach if he just wouldn't say these 3 verses here? Well, like I'm wrong. I have to be wrong. Paul wrote it because God inspired him to write it, and the reason Christianity exists is because he did because those words have endured. So which are the ones you are questioning? Are you worried about Hebrews? Are you worried about Jude and the 2 Peter connections? Like, what's the problem? None of it's actually a problem. If you believe that the people from 385 who were all Christians said, this is the stuff they left us. This is the real stuff. Well, then good. That's the real stuff. Look at it. It is. And what I said to the same guy who's like, how do I know this stuff is real? Okay. You can get this in the English if you study deep enough. It will happen. It will definitely happen. But it won't happen like it does in Greek and Hebrew. Okay. I want to write books. I've read Harry Potter cover to cover. You know what she did? Like first book to seventh. That's phenomenal what she did. To tie together a storyline through 7 novels without any holes in it, it's nearly, have you ever tried? Try. It's nearly impossible. You have to have an editor. You have to have multiple people reading your manuscripts and say, well, you forgot. You called him James over there, and then he married this wrong person. Like there's all sorts of stuff like that. Okay, so the Bible isn't one book by one author. It's 60, I always get it wrong, 66 books by, 50 some authors? Over the course of 3,000 years, in 3 different languages, and it holds together. Like the holes that you can find in it are like typos. They really are typos. You're like, but the date's wrong in 1 Kings 3. It doesn't say what it says in 2 Chronicles. Okay, so typos exist in the world. The manuscripts from the 800s that we have typos in them. But the content holds together in ways that are mind-blowing. You could not fake it. You could not. It is spiritually given. And there's the only way to know that is to read it. Like you can believe me when I say, oh, okay, and I'll put my hand on it and swear at court and then not care. But like, no, you really have to read it. And you say, well, how, Pastor Fisk? Open the Psalms and pray them in Jesus' name. Open the Proverbs and read them in Jesus' name. Once you have that as a pattern for daily life that is so ingrained in you that you're bored because you need more, then explore further, right? But do this for 2 months, for 3 months, and do it deeply. Do the Sons of Solomon approach 4 times a day. Do the red letters every single day. Do the Psalm 119 every single day, right? Get into that entire thing and see if you don't see pieces start to click together. Proverbs specifically. It looks like it doesn't make sense. You know what? It does. There's a pattern. There's a method. There's a reason. And then that reason, that wisdom that is opened, you get to start seeing that show up in Kings and in Judges. And if you're in it long enough, you'll see it in Leviticus. Yeah, which is pretty hard, really. Pretty tough to find it. I mean, you have to know your stuff. And it's right on the surface in 1 Peter. It's just dripping out of Hebrews, right? So like, what's your question? I need more on the question then, because if it's just a matter of how do we trust these men who made this decision then, we don't. We trust that God made sure that we have what we have. This weekend, I'm going to be preaching on 1 Kings. Oh, now I'm going to lose what chapter it is. 2 no, it's not that early. It's the end of Solomon's reign. Last words about Solomon. And it says, and as for the wisdom and the works of Solomon, are they not written in the book of Solomon? Well, yeah, I guess so. But I don't know where that is. Why is that not in the Bible? Jesus. But he wrote it at the same time. Probably had more copies of the wisdom of Solomon, or not the wisdom, the works of Solomon, than they did of 1 Kings, because 1 Kings is like this weird prophetic. The reason 1 Kings pedigree is so difficult, it's got so many typos in it, is that it's like this like prophetic work. It's not from inside the palace. So like what gets through? Why don't we have the actual 1 Corinthians or 3 Corinthians, and we only have 2nd and 4th, and we call them 1st and 2nd? Why aren't those scripture? Jesus. Not because they weren't there at the meeting in 385, but why weren't they there? Jesus. So why were they accepted and the shepherd of Hermas not? Jesus. I mean, it's not like because they thought Jesus. No, really, he's the one who manufactures history. He's the author of the entire thing. Nothing happens that he doesn't allow. And this thing was, forgive me, but it's settled. Like Lutherans officially would say it's not settled. It's officially. So we're so weird. This is because like if you do the math, like calculus, there's a possible error until we have to clarify. Okay, it's kind of like what's the way we say it? Baptism is necessary for salvation. but it's not absolutely necessary for salvation, right? And we're right when we do that, but it's also very annoying because it just is confusing to everybody else, right? So the reason we say there's still an open canon is only because they didn't actually close it then. They just said, we know these books are the books that came from who they came from. So they never closed it, so neither have we. But, if you found 3 Corinthians, like, how would you prove its pedigree as good as the rest? You can't. You can't. Even if you found it, you found 300 copies of it in 2 different locations or 7 different locations, it still wouldn't have the pedigree of having been in the Bible since the 300s. So it can't possibly be at the same level. Why? Because Jesus did it. So I hope that helps. I'm going to come down to, he's got more response here. So let's see what else he says. He says, it comes from talking to Eastern Orthodox Catholic people who like to argue that their leaders should be believed at a similar level. I don't think so. I'm just not strong in it. Well, I mean, they're like, you can't trust the ones who wrote it back then. You must trust the one who's alive right now. I don't get that. Thank you for everything so far. It's very helpful. Yeah, you're welcome, Chase. They come in and they're all hoity-toity and they want to scuttle your confidence that God knows what he's doing. And the only way you can be sure that God knows what he's doing, since you're no longer confident, is to trust them and their system. Right? They want you to become part of their institutional life. And to do that, they're gonna diminish your trust in the Scripture being true by subtly questioning whether it's enough. Did God really say? Does that sound familiar? Did God really say? It sounds familiar to me. So, God bless the Eastern Orthodox and God bless the Roman Catholics with repentance, faith, and life. They are members of the Christian church. There are Christians among them. But what a blasphemous and cruel thing to say to any other Christian. Oh, you Protestants, you're so divided because you don't have a pope. Okay. You guys are like blessing same-sex unions. Come on. And the East, herding cats. That's all I got on that one. Herding cats. Love you all out there. All you Christians in the East, God bless you. There's a lot of you East out there. I don't know what you're doing. So I can't tell which is which until I talk to you. In the meantime, I like the Bible. I trust the Bible. Why? Well, it's God's word. It is something that the New Testament era gave us that the Old Testament era didn't get. It's part of the priesthood of all believers. It's part of God's writing of his law on your heart. It's there for you to meditate and contemplate on every single day. Even after it was given to the church in the early centuries, it was lost to the church for hundreds of years due to greed and malfeasance of man. And it was restored during the Protestant Reformation. And now we have so many copies that nobody reads it. People died for this book. They bled for this book. John Huss burned at the stake for this book. Tyndale died for this book so you could read it. And now we're like, well, I don't know, because some guy with a beard or some guy with a cope says you should trust the magisterium of the church more. I mean, forgive me. I'm not trying to hurt you, Chase, but I'm trying to like your older brother, slap you on the back of the head. Come on, man. Come on. Where does authority come from? What became flesh and dwelt among us? The teaching tradition of the church? St. Peter's seat? No, the word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we have beheld his glory, grace and truth. You would do well to pay attention to these, like a light shining in a dark place. I believe that's 2 Peter. Might be first. So, hope that helps. Frisbee chimes in there at the end. If what the Pope says, even ex cathedra, is on par with Scripture, then we are in trouble. Well, as Lutherans, we certainly are. I mean, we're clearly the only ones who are outside the faith, according to some of the more recent Roman Catholic statements. So, yeah.
We have a question tonight about how to read what it says in 1 Timothy chapter 3 about elders, overseers, and deacons. The basic question is, can single men fill these various offices?
Yes. That's easy. But 1 Timothy 3, okay, so we have, this is a faithful saying. If a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, that's the question probably, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior. hospitable, able to teach, not given to wine, not violent, not greedy for money, gentle, not quarrelsome, not covetous, one who rules his own house well, having his children in submission with all reverence. For if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how will he take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest, being puffed up with pride, he fall into the same condemnation as the devil. Moreover, he must have a good testimony among those who are outside, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. Likewise, deacons must be reverent, not double-tongued, not given to much wine, not greedy for money, holding the mystery of the faith with a pure conscience. But let these also first be tested. Then let them serve as deacons, being found blameless. Likewise, their wives must be reverent, not slanderers, temperate, faithful in all things. Let deacons be the husbands of one wife, ruling their children and their own houses well. For those who have served well as deacons obtain for themselves a good standing and great boldness in the faith which is in Christ Jesus. So both bishops and deacons here are listed as being married to one wife, as opposed to what Rome obviously teaches, right, about bishops and priests. They have deacons that can get married in the Roman Catholic Church. They are laymen who serve in an auxiliary role. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, the tripartite ministry, the three-part ministry of the Roman Church requires that you have bishops, priests, and deacons, or you don't really have church. And so, in fact, all the rest of us aren't church in one other way, because we're not like the great beast on the city of Seven Hills. Our point of view, Protestant, unaltered Augsburg Confession, they call us Lutherans, is that when it says overseer and deacon here, it is effectively referring to pastor who is over pastors and pastors, right? So you have senior pastor, associate pastor kind of listed here. The guy who has to be worried about everybody and the guy who's helping him. That's the way the language was used in Acts, only it was apostles and deacons at that point, right? And then those deacons did what? They baptized and they preached. So you can say they weren't ordained if you want, and there's an argument about that. But the thing is, they baptized and they preached. So that's what they did. And now here they're being called again. So this is not a listing for those who would serve as elders in a congregation or deacons in a congregation in most Calvinist or Lutheran bodies. You go to most of those congregations, they're going to be like, in the Constitution, there's going to be this board of something, and they're elders or deacons. And our position would be that that's not what this is about, although certainly those men should hold to, if they're going to be leaders in the church in any way, these texts apply to them. But what these texts are about is not about godly men lifting their hands in prayer. That's 1 Timothy 2. This is about overseers and deacons. This is about those who are charged to work for the church officially. And indeed, as it says, they'll receive a good reward for their labor. Now, the question, do they have to be married? No. Can they not be married and do this? And because it says they must be the husband of one wife, you could get really literal. It's not really literal, though. No one would read this normally and say he's saying you must be married to do this. How do I describe this way of reading Scripture? It's biblicistic, non-linguistic. It's kind of, how do I just read it? Let's look at this other verse where it says about the wives. Likewise, their wives must be reverent, not slanderers, temperate, faithful in all things. It says not slanderers, not temperate, not faithful. The wife has to be not temperate and not faithful in all things? Well, no. That's not what it says. But actually, if you read it with really strict English rules, that's in fact what it says. If you use all the commas, we ate grandma and all that stuff. Like it's poor English, I suppose. So like don't let the grammar of the English translation get in the way of what is clearly being said. And what's clearly being said is that they shouldn't have 2 wives. They shouldn't have 3 wives. Why would you have to say that? Because that was normal-ish everywhere before Christianity. Still is. Huh? And the way Christianity has always seen this is like, God created 2. and then they made children, but they didn't, it was the two. And so now we understand that that's the intention in creation and design, that there aren't supposed to be, Jim and Jenny and Kristen with their kids. And that when that happens, it gets much more difficult. And the lives of the patriarchs make this clear. And this, I'm going to share something here that I don't want to say like this, that I'm confirmed on this, but I've been pondering it recently. Because, I'm trying to think how to start it. We have, as American Christianity, I think, overshot the corrective that Christianity brings to ancient man and woman's irreconciliation and chauvinism. So Christianity provides a corrective to chauvinism. But I'm going to suggest we've overshot that corrective by, I don't know, 1,000,000 years or so. Like, we're really past it, and we need to swing the other way to where there are proper distinctions between man and woman. And what struck me was that while I've always assumed that this taught you should only have one wife because that's the right way. It doesn't say that. You have to extrapolate that. Nowhere does it say that. It just says you can only have one wife. Just like it says a king should only have one wife in Deuteronomy. Why? It's too much work to have 2 wives or 3 wives or 4 wives and be a king or be a pastor. Like, you're never, in fact, Paul says in Corinthians, maybe you should be celibate because you won't have as much time for the church if you have a wife, because you'll be concerned about her and all of her stuff. So double that, triple that, quadruple that. And now maybe you can see why it wasn't designed that way. So it's in fact the whole scenario here, right? It is not either or, but it is both and. It is both and. And this is where when people say, well, how could Solomon or David have all these wives and still have faith? It's because it's not sin the way adultery is sin. This is very important. Very, very important. You like the Bible? You like what the Bible says? Then having 2 wives is not committing adultery. It's not. It's having 2 marriages. Adultery is sex outside of marriage. So the Old Testament and New Testament never forbid multiple marriages except for overseers and deacons, because they are to be held to a higher standard as the picture of what is supposed to be. And Christendom, for hundreds, 1,000+ years, everyone's like, yeah, they're right. And everyone came along. What a thing. That the truth in its demonstration has the capacity to, in fact, trickle down and change. The good and the wise can be seen so clearly that once it works, others will follow. And so I think there's just glory in this here, especially if you can see how it isn't the kind of sin to have multiple wives that it is for a man to lie with a man. Or let me say, for a man to do wicked things with a child. It just isn't in the same capacity. Isn't in the same capacity as for a man to lie with another woman's wife, or to lie with a woman who he is not married to. All of those things are on a biblically faith-destroying pattern. And biblically, more than one wife doesn't appear to destroy your faith, although if they worship false gods, it will. And in fact, it can, because that's the warning given to the kings. So it's there. It's there. Don't get me wrong. And I said at the start, I'm going to say this poorly. I'm just thinking it through. But can you see how, like, the real problem isn't some sort of like soulmate reality? It's what we were made to be. And we are made to be one-on-one for the kids, but not so we could like stare into each other's eyes in deep love forever, because we're made for each other, and that's why it's 2 made 1 flesh. No. It's because the kids need to look up and see father and mother and know who's there. And not be like father and mother and wait, which one? And why do those kids get better treatment than we do? And what was it? I'm not even a son. I don't even get an inheritance. What's that about? Like, that is the wickedness, like, spreading, right? Spreading. But that, like, it is having 2 wives and giving, a concubine, and the kids in the concubine don't get as much stuff. That's really different than just, sexing the prostitute and leaving the baby by the side of the road. Like, there's miles away from each other. I don't think we should do any of them, because Christianity teaches a different way. But I think we've overshot our arrogance and like, how could they? When I get these questions, how could Solomon have all these wives? You know what? It was a different world. And the answer to how he had all the wives is very easy. It was treaties. He was just sealing treaties. And then if he was dutiful, he had to go in and sleep with them to seal the treaty and make a son to seal the treaty. But like, the thing is, Deuteronomy said, don't do it. So Solomon, in all of his wisdom, missed that one. And well, that's a good question. How did Solomon make his mistakes? Ecclesiastes is my answer there. But,
So a single man can't say, 1 Timothy 3.
I can't be a pastor now.
I can't be an elder. Sorry, pastor.
Well, you could say, no, because it has nothing to do with elders. It has nothing to do with elders at churches. If your pastor asks you to be an elder at the church, the only reason you can say no as a man over 40, 30, is that, in fact, your family needs that time right now because life is that hard and it's your task to care for them. And if that's not the reason that you can't go to one meeting a month to support your pastor in his work in the church, because that's what he's probably asking you to do, well then, you can say no for other reasons, but like being asked to be an elder at your church, I don't ask people that lightly. I guard my elders like nothing else. Like nothing else. I'd rather have a bad treasurer. It's not quite true, bad treasurer, but I love my treasurer. The elders as a position, like the only reason you ask a man to do that is because you believe he is a calm and collected human who's capable of being in the worst thing that can happen in the church and thinking with the Bible and being on the same team as the other Christians in the room. And, that takes gravitas. Really does. And so I would take that as a tremendous compliment from your pastor. And then from there, you don't really have any way out unless you're biblically living a licentious life. But there's, you already went through the rest of that list, and the list isn't for you, but it is a good list for what a righteous man looks like. But do you murder? Do you commit adultery? Do you bear false testimony? Do you? I skipped one. Steal. There we go. Coveting. We all covet. Although coveting, very technically would mean to harbor the covetousness, not just to want it, but to harbor it over time, to plan to get it, and then to seek to get it. Luther talks about that in the explanations pretty clearly. So, yeah.
Earlier, you had talked about wanting to speak on plagiarism, right? Copyright.
Oh, just to mention it in terms of the AI context. Yeah.
We have a question from our brother in Christ named Zadok. He is talking about something similar. He goes and visits his mother, recently went for Easter and then Mother's Day. And when he goes and visits, it's his home congregation, the town of his home congregation. Mm-hmm. And so he makes sure that his visit will include Sunday morning worship. So on Easter, he was a little startled and confused by what was said in the sermon by the pastor. I believe it's an LCMS congregation. Mm-hmm. The pastor was saying things along the lines of Jesus moves the stones or problems in our lives away. And that made this man, Zadok, kind of nervous. He was like, that just doesn't sound Lutheran. And lo and behold, he found on an ELCA pastor's website the exact sermon that was preached on Easter Sunday.
Something.
So then he returns for Mother's Day, and it happens to be Ascension. And the sermon, he went prior and printed out this ELCA pastor's Ascension Sunday sermon, brought it with him, and read along with this LCMS pastor as the sermon was being preached.
So I'm just going to jump right in. You take a copy of that sermon, you write a letter, and you mail it to the DP of your district. I mean it. Like, there's no way around that. You mail it to your DP. Normally, you don't go to the DP. That's not normally what you do. But in this case, you just do it. You say, I know this is happening. Here's the example. You tell me what to do, DP. District president is what that means. What district are you in? That's tough to know sometimes depending on where you're at, but lcms.org should help you with that. You can call LCMS at lcms.org. You can call the International Center, and they will also answer questions about your district and how to get in touch with them and all this kind of stuff. And you could maybe even say, "Can I talk to someone about pastors plagiarizing sermons?" And they might send you to somebody. I don't know. But I definitely think you want an authority from our church body involved in anybody who's going to be not doing his job so very, very publicly, like you're not even trying to hide it.
Yeah. So he didn't mention it to his mother yet.
I wouldn't yet.
She doesn't know. She has been going to that congregation since she was baptized.
Yep.
I mean, she was baptized there, so she was born there, I'm assuming.
I'd just be texting her Wolfmueller sermons on Sunday afternoons, just like I wouldn't be like trying to just to fix this one. I'd go above mom we'll go to Jesus, right? But then go to the DP and let that come down first before you ruin your mom's view of her pastor. She can receive the sacrament from his hand faithfully. Jesus works that way. The Donatists taught us that. So sadly, I mean, I'd like to think that everybody's listening to this sermon as well as you are, and they're all going to be led astray because they don't. But they're listening as well as you are, so they're like, "Why is he saying that?" Right? Sadly, most people aren't going to be moved by this stuff. The fact that it's not his sermon, the fact that he's reading it, no one's listening anyway. So,
well, I mean, would it be the same kind of frustration if he were to read one of Luther's sermons? No, probably not.
Probably
right?
not, but you'd say it. You wouldn't pretend it was yours.
I
right?
see.
And so okay, let's go back to the AI for a second here and talk about copyright and plagiarism. What is plagiarism? Where does this come from? The idea of plagiarism is that you take something that's not yours and you say it's yours and you sell it. So you claim to have created something that you did not in fact create. And you take someone else's work and you try to profit on their work without giving them any credit for that profit either, right? And so copyright exists in order to protect the writer from that, so that when you type your name and then copyright and the date at the top of something that you write, now it has I'm laughing because I'm going to say it has legal standing in the United States of America. It's a court of law. They do still work sometimes. So it's not as bad as we're not all in Trump's courtroom, right? But you have legal standing that it belongs to you, and anyone, if someone were to steal it, you could sue them, immediately. That is the law. In fact, this other pastor could sue this pastor for what he's doing, right? Technically, I think, and because it is plagiarism, and so then that is one of the philosophical challenges that's brought to AI across the table. Forget art for a second and just think about ChatGPT. What was the thing today? Fetus comes home and he's like, there's this tick that makes you not eat cow anymore. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I asked ChatGPT, and yep, wouldn't you know, there's a tick called the Lone Star tick that doesn't always, can give you an allergy, not to red meat, to a sugar contained in red meat by most non-human mammals. Okay? There's a sugar that non-human mammals like cows and pigs have in their blood that is in the red meat that you can have an allergy to, caused by the tick having that from eating it himself.
Yeah, you had a coworker with that.
Putting it into you, and then you develop antibodies against that sugar, basically. So the antibodies against the sugar. What I find fascinating is sugar's at the middle of the whole thing still. So in one quick second, though, I'm like, I don't believe any of this. So I'm like, I asked ChatGPT, and what do you know? There it tells me all this stuff. Well, how did ChatGPT have that information? Well, it's read everything that there ever was before 2021 or whatever, more or less. It can't quote everything. It can't give you a copy of everything that it ever, but it has access to like everything they fed it. They fed it all the information that there is. So technically, it is able to parrot anybody. And so you can even have it like write in the style of somebody. You can say, I want, write in the style of I don't know, Harriet Tubman, but that's not what I want to say. Who wrote Harry Potter again? Is
Rowling.
Rowling, J.K. Rowling, right? And it will do that, right? And so then you can begin having it write. You can begin having it write in styles that you would then be your style, right? So I know I do the work with the computer. I make it write in the style of J.K. Rowling, but it's my writing because it's my story, right? That's where the questions start to come in. At what point are you plagiarizing? Or what point are you cheating in the way that you borrow? But here's sort of my question. What's the difference between me having a computer mimic and me mimicking? Because when I read stuff and then write, I mimic what it is. I take what was and I learn from it. I don't copy it. I change it. Well, that's also what ChatGPT is. So then let's taking it back to the art again. Like none of the art that AI produces is the actual art that it looked at. It just uses that art as its feed, as its source, as its seed to generate what it produces. And if you want to call that plagiarism, okay, but that's what your brain does when you read and look at things and then write things. So it's not plagiarism unless you take the actual thing and you put it out there and you say, it's my thing. That's plagiarism. And that's what this guy's doing. Like if he were just reading the guy's sermons and then like doing his own version of it, that would be kind of like just one. I mean, the beauty of AI is it's like everything all at once. Taking one bad sermon and doing a bad version of it. I mean, it's kind of lame and it's lazy, but it wouldn't be plagiarism at that point. It would be, I have a mentor or a coach, or I'm learning from this guy, or I study this guy, and he teaches great points, and that's what you do. I go read. I mean, what do I do all week? I go and I read books, and I steal all their ideas, and I tell you them. I don't steal them. I learn them, and then I share them. Okay. So, but I don't, if I'm going to open a book and read it to you, I say, right now I'm going to read from this book. And this is guys, you can get in the bookstore and I read it. And so that's where this is just what we would call immoral. It is theft.
Yeah. And then to choose somebody outside of our church body is like, whoa, dude.
Well, look, I'm all for Jesus will calm the storms in your life. I really think we can say that. I don't know that that's the meaning of the calming of the storm. I think it's the meaning of things like the admonition of prayer.
It was.
I'm going to finish my thought.
Sorry.
You're right. I know what you're going to say. I'm all for calming the storms in my life. I'm not so sure about rolling away the stones in my life, right? Which is what he said, right? He's going to roll away the stones. Because we're going from like, here's Jesus calming the storm, where everyone's like, we're afraid, calm the storm. He calms the storm. And now you're supposed to be in the tomb? And he's opening, but he's in the tomb. What's going, he rolls it away so you can go into the tomb? It's, as a metaphor, it doesn't even work. It's and it tramples on the resurrection then by doing so. Like it takes the very thing that isn't about, the storms in your life. It was his death and his resurrection, and it makes it not about him. No, the one thing that is always about Christ, his empty tomb is his empty tomb. Now, look, my tomb will be empty. My tomb is his tomb, right? And so there's that kind of thing, but like to compare like my hard week with the death of the Lamb of God for the sins of the world. Like the storm, compare it with the storm. My hard week was a storm, right? I got a giant to slay, kill Goliath. Okay. It just, to me, it's like taking this metaphor that you can do with almost anything in Scripture, and it's not all that bad, and it's putting it in the worst possible place to put it. No, and what we should really do is just teach people to pray and trust God will answer, rather than use bad metaphors that trample on Scripture. But
yeah,
Jesus is master of the storms, and that it is important we not deny that. Like he is demonstrating that, like, call out to him in prayer, whatever's going on, he'll stop. No. Unless he's got a better plan, thy will be done is part of it too.
You mentioned in your week, actually this week, you made a conscious decision to take ownership of space and do with it as you needed to in order to further a project for the family. And we have a brother in Christ who calls himself Adult Son. And he is an adult living with his parents. He moved away, and then after a few years, due to financial troubles he was having, he moved back home. At that time, the agreement with his parents was that this would be for 2 years, and then he would, get back on his feet and move out again. He has, since moving in, invested his time and money in renovating the home in a way that would make it so that he has his own space and doesn't disrupt their living quarters as much. But after only a few short months had passed, he started to notice that his father was showing animosity towards him. And it's really important to Adult Son that he maintains the health of his relationship with his father. And he also understands that his father owns the home, but he would rather not live as a recluse in the home, like, just be that roommate that you never see. And so Adult Son is asking for kind of a better understanding of what the biblical view of father to adult male-child relationship should be. And how does headship or ownership come into play in the Bible once a child is an adult?
Yes, that's a really good question. And it was just such horrible times. We just live in such horrible times for what this has done. So, first, I want you to ask the last question again. So if you can keep your eyes on that. I think it's pretty important that you go at this directly. I want you to correct me if I'm wrong in this, Meredith. I think you have to go at this directly. I think you have to have a conversation with your dad. I think you have to say, Dad, do you harbor animosity toward me because I'm here? Am I a failure in your sight? Are you angry at me for this? What can I do so that can stop, so I can get on my feet and move forward? Because to me, I won't ever really be on my feet if you and I aren't right. So I think that's more important than all the rest of it. Now, with that said, here's the thing. If your dad's mad that you're there, there could be all sorts of reasons involved. You could be a jerk. You could be a complete loser. Like you smell and you're rude and you don't listen and you shout at people all the time and all you do is watch TV and play video games. That could be what's going on. And then I'd be pretty pissed off too. In fact, I'd just kick you out actually at that point. But that said, there's this really disgusting American dream that's been given to the generation who are our fathers, which is that they're going to get rid of us and then they'll have everything for themselves and they'll do whatever they want the rest of their lives. Now, the reason they have to have this dream is because they didn't do that while they had kids. Now, that's interesting. Why did they stop living their lives while they had kids? I'd say feminism has something to do with that. But feminism promises that eventually the man can have his life back, and get out of his cave and go golf some more or something, right? Not have to worry about paying for some other person. That picture of the future, the best possible future, is I get rid of all my kids. I can't say on YouTube what that is, but it's that bad. There's the nice word bad. I won't say other words though, because it's messed up. Hate. It's practically hate. It's all based on greed, which is all based on the worship of the dollar. It's just disgusting. So, but none of them really know this. They're just living their American lives. And you know what? They went to college and got jobs and worked hard and it turned out, so why can't you? And this is the other thing. They have no clue what's going on right now. They probably still think that we're going to have a free and fair election this fall. They have no clue that since 2000s, a college degree ain't worth nothing. You don't got a job for that. You're not going to get a job for that. You have to have some sort of network from a high-end institution to have a job right out of college. Or go to some sort of trade school. They have no idea how difficult it is to then, even if you get a job, make a mortgage payment. They're not dealing with anything like the economy. They had dollars that were backed by gold, for goodness sakes. Gold! Okay? So like they have no clue. Now I'm saying all this with my anger so you can feel it and you can know he's never going to get it. Your conversation with him about being reconciled is not about him getting this. You're going to get this, and then you're going to swallow it and realize that you're not a victim, that for such a time as this you were born, that for such a time as this you are baptized, and that you are going to overcome it by knowing that Jesus is sufficient. That means first, fixing your relationship with your father and asking, do you want me to move out? Do you need me to move out for us to have a good relationship? Because I'm going to suffer. It's going to be harder. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I would rather move out than live in a house where I have to hide from my father because he's angry that I exist and need food. Like, that's sad. Where's God? God doesn't do that. God doesn't do that. Why is he doing that? So again, I feel your pain, all right? But okay, so here the other side of it is like, maybe you should move out. How? You don't know how. Where are you going to get the money? How are you going to do it? I don't know. Pray first, right? Go to Christ in this and tell him, Lord, it's clear to me that I don't own myself. And it's clear to me that this bothers my father, that my father still owns me. It bothers him. So help me to own myself. Help me to be able to care for myself, because this is what is supposed to happen. Biblically, what's supposed to happen? I don't know. By the time you're 13, 14, you should probably be able to get your own food. Kill a lion in the field. Take care of the sheep. I don't know. We're not there. We're not there. But legally in our country and all this, yeah, well, by the time you're 18, 19, 20, 25, like you're on the path to something. That's what you are, and it's what you're going to do. Call it self-sufficiency. You might live in a hovel. It's what you're going to do, and you're on the path. Are you on a path? Get on a path and then trust the path and work it out. Someone was just telling us, local, it was last week, members telling us about how little they had when they first started out and they moved here and from China and all that stuff. And it made me think about our time in seminary and fourth year when we were like literally homeless and it was like for like 2 months we lived in someone else's apartment. And what did we have? We had a kitchen table that isn't our big kitchen table now. It was from my grandma, and we must have had mattresses or something. We had so little. We had so little.
We moved out without a mattress. We moved out
our final year of seminary.
Without a mattress.
Granted, this is 2006, but it's 2006. We lived on $1,000 a month. I don't even know how we did it. But we didn't do much, and we ate crap and survived. We survived. And so what I'm saying here is, okay, you want to fix your relationship with your dad. It's the first thing you want to do. And that might mean you have to move out because he's not going to be capable of doing anything other than yelling at you about being not good enough. And so then it's time for you to find your own space so that you can come back to him and say, okay, Dad, like, let's have dinner. And like, we won't talk about that other stuff. We'll talk about the weather and Mom's hair, and she'll be happy. And we can love her, and we can have, we can pray together and all these things. And then you're going to have to move out and suffer. Have less than you want. Now, they agreed to have you come home and do this. So again, I'm not saying this is the way it has to be. You have to move out, but you have to go directly at this conversation. Otherwise, you're going to just, like you said, you're going to be a ghost in your own home. You're going to tiptoe around, and it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. Unavoided conflict just broods. So, in the as wisdom would have it, of a parent, a father has the sons to give them everything that's his. And because otherwise you just die and it goes to someone else. So, but what most of us are trying to do is stockpile enough goods to like take it easy and, say, be well, be easy, soul, have a good time for the rest of your life. Stuff the Bible says, you fool too. What we are hungering for as a people is for fathers and sons to rediscover each other as the meaning of life. Like, falling in love and getting married is not the meaning of life. looking into her eyes is not the meaning of life. The son, looking into your son's eyes isn't the meaning of life. Watching your son take yours and make it his, that's the meaning of life right there for a man. That's some power. You know, we got a half-finished shed in the backyard. It's got bent parts and nails ain't straight, and it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You know, this is going to get better. And so that's been lost. That's been stolen by entertainment, by TV, by all sorts of claims. And your task, I would say, for your heart is to prefer restoring the relationship in any way to something of jovial or camaraderie, to a financial benefit. I'd sacrifice the dollars, because you're gonna be a better person on the other side. The weight of energy you carry in a toxic or a hostile context that you have to live in will prevent you from succeeding at other things. You're trying to go to work to pay off the debt. You got to come home and it's worse there than it was at work. Now it's more work at home than it was at work. You don't want to go to work. You were supposed to go home and work on the education so you could get a better job, but instead you have to deal with this and that. Or maybe, and it's maybe you're not even dealing with it. He doesn't talk to you, but now you're just by yourself in a room wondering why your dad doesn't talk to you and why he stares at you weird, right? So like all of that weight of being in that space isn't going to help you achieve the goals that you're wanting to achieve, even though on paper, yes, it would be. If they wanted you there, if he wanted you there, this is the best scenario. The best scenario is you move in and plan to stay there at least until you're married, because in the meantime, if you never get married, now when they get old, they have a live-in caregiver. Like, is he that dumb? He might be, but like that's in fact how God designed it. Ideally, like you're getting married and moving into their room, and they're moving into the apartment they built for just themselves because they don't need all that space anymore. They're getting old. But that would take some foresight, some love, and family. You have to really believe in family at that point.
Yeah, in his letter, he mentioned something about his father possibly getting comfortable in the empty nest phase. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that speaks to what you're saying.
Well, he got to enjoy. I mean, I get it. Like more space, more time, more money, right? But like,
I just don't think that the empty nest phase is biblical from what you're explaining to us.
The sending away and then they're never there. It's the got rid of a mindset that I just don't get it, because look, we can't have all 5 of our children marry their spouses and live in this house with kids. It will not work. But that doesn't mean I want to get rid of them. Right. I would want to build the house bigger if I could, or expand the land, right? Or and so I'm not trying to give tactics here. I am talking about a principle that must be embraced. And if your dad's not going to embrace it, he's not going to embrace it, but you want to for your own good. So you stop taking the heat unnecessarily of his American expectations that are not from God. And so that you then also have the chutzpah to decide not to take anymore. I don't have to live here. Money ain't worth this.
That kind of goes into the second part of his question was, how does headship or ownership come into play in the Bible once a child is an adult?
Well, yeah. It never goes away emotionally, nor does the command to honor the parent go away. But it is about ownership, right? And this is where, so what's bar mitzvah? It's when the young Jewish boy is supposed to take ownership of himself as a faithful person, not financially, but in his own faith. He's supposed to take ownership of what he believes. Confirmation, I guess, in theory, is supposed to do the same thing. So that process of self-ownership is supposed to begin much, much younger than where you're at. But then still living in the home, that boy is owned by the father. The father owns all that is under him. And you can talk about like property. I'm not really talking property. I'm talking about spiritually, or a mental investment, like takes it on as his. And no matter how much that boy at 12 or 13 might consider himself in charge of himself, like the father is taking on a lot of things for that son. He's guarding a lot of things, so that son never has to worry about them. By 18, 19, 20, you got your own bank account. You're kind of your own man now, actually. Unless you're just living off of the suckling of the parents and getting the financial flow from them, which isn't necessarily bad. But then at that point, like, you're still, well, privilege is good. Having finances that support you from above so you can go further is good. I don't want to diminish those things. But sitting on a parent's income is bad. Assuming that you can just receive your whole life and eat and not work is bad. So, we got a kind of a slippery corner here. Say that last part of the question again. I want to bring it back to.
It was, how does the headship ownership change, or what does the Bible speak on with regards to adult children?
So at some time between 18 and 20, as a man, you're just going to be unavoidably, you're going to become an adult. And you will have so much ownership of yourself that it will be somewhat difficult for you to be inside of some other man's house. Because he's going to be like, no, do it this way. And you're going to be like, well, I don't want to do it that way. But it's like, it's his house. And so that's where, like, you are your own man. You own yourself, but you are a renter. You are a tenant. You're a tenant in this other guy's house. And it is his house. And what he says should go really kind of at all times out of respect for him. And that means that for you to reestablish ownership of your life, you will again have to move out or establish a clear understanding where you are his servant. So you own yourself as his servant because you live in his home. And then the question is, so now that I live in the home and I benefit from being in the home, how may I serve you? How may I make this home better? Not just for my corner or my space so I don't bother you, but how may I be part of this economy so that you feel like it's good that I'm here rather than bad that I'm here. Again, with all the baggage of our world right now, I don't know if there's a way for the standard American dad to see it as good, because sadly he sees his son's presence in his home as bad. But again, this is because he has this view of success founded on his experience. And so since he sent you into his experience, you're not having his success means you're some kind of failure. And so he thinks of himself as a failure for raising a failure of a son, for not having the success that you should have since he had it. But what he doesn't realize is he got sold a game in a casino, and his family's being sold into slavery, and the farm is gone, and all of his empty nest fun, that was the purchase price. You got a golden ticket for 15 years of retirement. Now all of your grandchildren are slaves, bond servitude. Yay for you. He doesn't know that. He doesn't know that. He doesn't see that. No.
It's pretty hard to be frustrated with a house guest who is willing to cut the grass and notices that there needs to be vacuuming done and cleans the bathrooms, offers to make meals, throughout the week or at least 2 nights a week, cleans up the dishes. Those types of house guests are sad to see go.
They are, because you enjoy having them around.
The one who says, hey, I'm going to be out by the grocery store. What's on the list? Mm-hmm. It's little stuff and it seems domestic, but at the same time, it's
domestic.
Super noticeable.
It's domestic.
To
Domestic
the
is
owner.
good.
That's something that we've learned at Hebron. It's really sad to see the Hebron guest go who's like, what else can I do to help? Mm-hmm. Don't leave. You're not leaving yet. Really? Because it just helps so much to have you here. Mm-hmm. And so to be that blessing in your parents' lives, they're going to recognize you for the gift that you are. And it will, unfortunately, it's stroking their selfish ego, but that's how it works.
Incentive is real. The flesh is real. You're not going to beat the flesh. You're not going to stop the flesh from being the flesh. You can self-control yourself and not give it what it wants, but it's still going to be there, right? That's why it's a different topic. Feeling guilty over the flesh is a waste of your time. Just put it into submission and move on. There was a commercial, or a commercial is the news, but there are commercials these days. For it was in New York, where they have this immigration crisis on a different level. Well, Chicago's pretty bad, but New York really did it to itself. And they were showing this program where the state will give a little bit of money to a homeowner that will house an immigrant, and they're showing this relationship between this like old white woman and this 40-year-old Spanish woman who's washing her dishes, cooking her food, doing the laundry, and it's kind of, oh look, a live-in slave. You just brought her in from the South. Look at that. Look at that. Hey, wait, what just happened, America? We don't even see it. It's the people advocating for the immigration the ones doing it. It's their own people too. It's so sad. We're just returning to an era before Christendom, you know. Brian jumps in. He says, "I'm learning to be content without buying a home and land because of prices." So it's just kind of on the.
Yeah, we were talking about the prices in our neighborhood just today, and just incredibly floored by how much things have gone up.
It confirmed the news I saw. I didn't believe the news when I saw it, but it's kind of like, I guess the inflation is a thing. You print trillions of dollars out of thin air. It's going to change things.
Well, I wanted to, before we go ahead.
And the casino is how you, so inflation's not new. Inflation's old. Casino land is how you stay in. So if you hold your land, the value increases. But when you sell it and spend it, it's gone now. You can't buy back in. The casino's more expensive now for your kids, right? And that's what we've been doing for 2 generations.
Yeah.
2 generations. It was not your dad's generation. It's your grandparents' generation sold the farm first, right? I mean, mine actually sold the farm.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it wasn't entirely their fault.
Ours wasn't a farm. It was a tavern. Something that I wanted to, so 2 things. Before we move on from the topic of adult male children, in the psychological development or just the growth of a boy, there is a phase of life. It's around 15 to 18 where it's imperative that we as parents encourage our young men to get jobs, because that will instill in them this appreciation for the dollar. It also is a time when they're hungry for independence and responsibility, and it feeds that. So we won't have as much of an issue with this. It seems like it's an epidemic of 25-year-olds playing video games and just eating what is served to them by the mother. So to latch on to the natural development of independence, we need to, even if we can afford to give everything to our kids between the ages, our boys from the ages of 15 to 18, it's imperative that they be forced to get a job.
They have to learn the value of labor. It's not the value of the dollar, it's the value of labor.
Right.
Labor.
Yes.
What it really takes to do it. And I was thinking about that a little bit with him today, how it is how the expectation, it's beautiful. He's not afraid of it running out. I've done a good job of sheltering him from the fear of poverty. But I need this, I need that. We need some more of this. We need that. It's kind of like you just have no clue, even the time to go get it. And that's exactly it. That's what a child is. And they have to be instructed and shown. And there will be no better way to show anybody the value of labor than have them work for $15 an hour and get that $15 at the end and be like, and watch the taxes get taken out of it and say, what? Wait a minute. And then you'd be like, yep, that's the way it is. Well, that's not fair. You're right. And then suddenly it all makes sense. And they're like, oh.
Yeah.
how much did food cost tonight?
Yeah. And it's at that age where the brain is old enough to recognize, because you mentioned our son, we need this, we need that. His brain just isn't even able to really put two and two together yet in a lasting way. Like for a moment, he can be, today I earned $40. Whoa, that Lego set is $60. That's a lot of work. I'm not there yet. But then tomorrow he's going to forget, because his mind just doesn't hold on to those types of concepts at 12 and 13.
Those were glorious, glorious days.
Yeah.
That was the way to be.
But the other concept that I thought was interesting, you were talking about land and the casino, and something that our family has recently talked about is, as kids do get older, if marriage isn't something that comes before they are able to save up for a down payment, but go use that money that's earned and saved, to purchase a home that people would live in together. So the family economy keeps on going. So then, as if somebody were to get married, then they could either kind of rent to own that house from the siblings who helped pay for it, or whatever, work it out some way. But then if you think about at first it was funny because I proposed this idea because I was like, I see things might be changing. I'm not sure that everybody's going to be able to reinvent the wheel on their own 10 years from now.
Yeah, maybe not at 23, right?
Right. But so maybe being prepared to further the family economy into marriage is a good idea, just to prepare your minds and hearts for, instead of what the television is telling us, where you turn 23, you get married, you have your own house, you decorate it the way you want it to be decorated, and you live happily ever after. And at first the concept was like, oh my goodness, this is so silly, Mother. What are you talking about? I don't want to live with my sister when I'm a newlywed. And then I said, well, think about it this way. You're a newlywed. You are nervous about being away from the home. And what are you going to do all day while your husband's at work? If you, you're nervous about being lonely. Well, there's your sister. And then you have children, and then you have another child, and there you have a live-in nanny for the kids. You can go to the hospital and have your baby anytime, day or night, and you'll have childcare. Let's think about the pros and cons. And eventually the concept was at least entertained.
I mean, you think about most young couples, they don't get a house unless the guy's got some real job work going. And a lot of us end up in apartments.
Exactly. And how is that different?
Yeah, well, I mean, two of us going in on apartments together would have a house.
Yeah.
And so and how long does it take for a couple to fill up a 3 or 4 bedroom house? Well, 4, 5, 6 years. And so, that's a lot of rent that could be, in fact, built into not rent, but a longer plan with those who you are blood bound to be tied to the rest of your lives. If you share the faith, share the vision, have the relationship where it's not toxic, where you can endure each other, where you can support each other, when you can forgive each other. Lots of other cultures do it in one house, 3, 4 generations with many people, because they don't have a choice. What we're trying to do is to realize we might not have a choice in 45 years, so we're going to start now. And I really mean that. I'm not thinking next year. I don't know. 2027 could be pretty wicked. And 2029 has a big comet headed our way, apparently. So get ready for all the lies they're going to tell you. But I'm living with the assumption that, in fact, we have 40 years of peace before it really goes sideways in a way that matters, and we're going to build for that day. And that could be economic collapse. That could be world war. I don't care. If the summer has a green tree, then, get ready to garner fruit. And so that's what we're talking about with the kids and why we're having these conversations. It's not even about they actually do it. It's about the mindset that we're in this together. We're in this together. We're not kicking you out. We're not asking you to do it on your own, because no one does it on their own. And if you don't have a support system, if you don't have a client base, if you don't have a father, then you can't get a leg up. You will be a bondservant. That is what you will be. So we're trying to both believe that and then engender it in our kids so they don't go out and sell themselves into servitude needlessly. As it's very easy to do for your own house that you can decorate with all the crap you bought from Walmart that'll be gone in 3 or 4 years, and the debt will still be there. And the house will need repairs. And all this stuff that, it's not on the TV show, and it's not in the cartoons, it's not in the books that they read as kids, all the stuff that has to be done. So how do you get it through their heads? Well, again and again, conversation. You kind of just demonstrated it. It wasn't one conversation. You didn't expect them to get it with one sitting. You continued with an idea that's building on a bigger idea, which we've had, which is that we're in this together as a family.
Right. And planting the seed of the idea that so we all have this hunger for community and friendship. And it's a hunger that we've called friendship in our society today. But what it is it's really the community. And in generations past, family would offer that community. You would have aunts, uncles, grandma, grandpa, cousins all around you, creating an identity, a space for you, and
a people.
A people, exactly. And now we've been convinced to separate from that tribe, if you will, and create new communities and people out of quote unquote friends who have no blood relationship with us. But you do come from different tribes. You speak different languages, even though we all maybe speak English. The way that we speak it is going to be different. And so, you're never going to be as close or as bonded, I guess, with a friend as you could be with your family. Now I know that a lot of the people that write to us and ask for advice are talking about family members that they're having trouble with. And you have to understand that this is not a problem that just happened overnight, and it's not a problem that's going to be solved in one generation. We're actually working towards things for, you mentioned 40 years, but it's like things for our grandchildren, great-grandchildren to benefit from. So this mentality of siblings buying a house together, it then just kind of plants that seed and idea that siblings grow old in a neighborhood together or in a town together, so that cousins can fill that space of a desire for friendship. The family, the tribe, it just suddenly becomes bigger than life. And you're not alone. You're not wandering the streets by yourself. You're not on a journey.
And it only takes 2 generations.
Right.
It only takes 2 generations. But it's not being done by commoners in America. So, Brief History of Power, have you found it yet? It's a good place to get these kinds of ideas. Why would you want to be a people? Why would you want to make a stand? Why would you want to change America? And Dr. Kuntz and I ask those questions and more. BHOP.com, that's not right. It's at abriefhistoryofpower.com. This recent week, he is releasing an independent piece that he did from a recent talk on the order of creation. And last week, he did a ad hoc independent piece on being a man. So both should tie nicely together for this particular question, actually. I recommend both of those episodes, even though I don't talk in either of them.
That's honorable of you.
Kirby Kazoo says, right this moment, I'm doing home repairs in a house I and my wife and baby rent from my sister. It all works. It started when I was jobless, so it's wild how it all ties together. Yeah, Jesus has a plan.
Amen.
And that plan can involve you being like thrown overboard and, chased by wild animals, all sorts of stuff. But on the other side, he was there all along, and it's his name that is peace. His name that is peace. It's well past our bedtimes here, Meridith. We have had for the late start, we didn't even tell you about the late start. Computer woes. Hopefully the sound's been okay. We did a lot of updating, moving, and changing of things this week in the house, and I like my new setup. It's all going to get put in a box within 10 minutes. It's going to go away. It's going to be so clean in here. So But it did lead to a little bit of a late start. Nonetheless, we have had a couple hours fly right by. Thank you for being here with us. If you would be willing to support us and subscribe to our show, you can do that at subscribestar.com/REVFISK. You can also go to revfisk.com and sign up for my Ziklag Daily newsletter and become a paying subscriber. That's pretty cool as well. Meanwhile, what else have I'm too tired. At the end, I did it. When we started the show, I was like, man, that was so professional. I was laying stuff out. It was all flowing. And now it's just like thumpity, 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 thumpity.
Oh, you're doing fine.
So that was great tonight. Thank you, Nithris. Thank you for the support. Those of you who do, the financial thing is just, it's always a burden. I don't like asking for money. I don't like asking for support. I never have. And yet if I don't do it, I watch the numbers kind of go down. So I haven't pushed it. I haven't asked a lot. I haven't said it much for a while. I'm going to have to start doing it more because we've just seen a little bump the other direction. It's because of the times, but it's also because of the shift. So if you're out there, you're a fan, you've been listening for a long time, $5 a month, really? You can do it. $5 a month, you can do it. So sign up at subscribestar.com. Maybe go a little higher, $5 a week, $20 a month. It's not that big in your picture. And when it comes into ours, it adds up. It does add up. So thanks for the support. Check out all sorts of other stuff. I know I said them all already, and I should just go.
Well, we have the Sons of Solomon muster coming up. So go to sonsofsolomon.net. And you can check out the Hebron Collegium at hebroncollegium.org.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you desire to help us out with books for the Hebron Collegium, or there are also some workshop equipment.
Oh yeah,
Amazon,
fill the library, all the wish lists.
lists.
Yeah, those are all in the Ziklag Daily. And
sign up for the Ziklag Daily, and you can look at those wish lists. And thank you to all you who have sent things. The library is growing slowly but surely, and our guest that we have visiting right now is just loving. Every time I come over with a pile of books, he's like, "Oh, don't put them in the library. I want to look through them first." So right. He's just having a great time over there. We are so blessed by his visit. And ladies or gentlemen who quilt, if you are a quilter, you can also make quilts for Hebron. We have very basic coverings for the beds. They aren't pretty, but they serve their purpose. But the idea is that as we have our more long-term guests come, we want to send them home with a little bit of Hebron, and that quilt would be just the thing. So while they're here, they would snuggle up underneath it. We do not allow the heater in the winter to be up very high. So a nice quilt is a good thing. And then when they leave, they can take it with them. So we'll need quilts regularly and for many months and years to come. If you're interested, go to RevFisk. It's RevFisk.
To contact?
Yeah.
No, madpxm.com/contact. Yeah. You can contact me through revfisk.com if you're a paying subscriber at revfisk.com. All 25 of you out there, there's a contact button buried way at the bottom just for you.
Okay, so for Hebron quilts, go to madpxm.com.
Madpxm.
Oh, madpxm. See, Luddite lady.
I know.
Can't get it all.
And then
straight.
when I got to tag it on Twitter, it's at madpxmondays all the way through. So you better believe keeping it all straight in the digital world.
Okay, so for those of you who are Luddites like me, we'll say it one more time the right way, madpxm.com.
Yeah, it's Mad Christian Mondays, right? MadPX, that's the Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mondays, m.com. Thank you for remembering to ask about those quilts and talking more about Hebron. The great value that it has there. We're going to hit the sack so we can get our show on the road tomorrow for Peck Things. Thanks for joining us this evening to razzle and skedaddle around all of the rest of it. Your questions, that's the last thing I should say, is if you do have questions for the show, I love your theological questions. Send more. I love your psychological questions. Send more. I love your jiu-jitsu questions. Send more. I love your nerd questions. Send more. You do that at madpxm.com/contact. And anyway, you need to get a hold of us. That'll be the place. Hey, Jesus Christ is risen from the dead, and that means you've been paid for. That makes you immortal now, and he's not going to be long anyway. You found Stop the White Noise with Jonathan and Meredith. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Meredith.
Don't wallow in the muck with those who have no hope. Lift up your head all the more as you see the day approaching. Rock on and hallelujah. And because it's on a new computer, no music this week. Hopefully I'll fix that by next week. We'll catch you next time. It's just going to finish and close. You got to sing before I click the button. What do you want to say?
Like do.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Is that the same one still?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's pretty good. That was it. I don't remember how it starts though. And I really want to do it. Anyway, hallelujah.